Hello everyone, this is Professor Bentham, and I wanted to go over a couple of things with you in regards to the last assignment, major assignment that you submitted to me, which was your first essay, and also to prepare you for your second essay. So the last essay mainly focused on your essay structure, your making sure that you have your introduction, in other words, your body paragraphs and your conclusion, your MLA formatting. It should have been up to par, especially based on the example that I provided you. Also, the thesis statement, ensuring that you had a correct thesis statement and that it tied in closely with your body paragraphs. And I pretty much deducted about 5 points per item. So if you were missing an MLA formatting or the MLA formatting and you were missing, let's say, the thesis statement, I deducted a total of 10 points. Okay, so what I want to do for today is go over the first essay in terms of what you should have included, and to make sure that for your second essay you have those components laid out in that particular essay. I will be very, very strict. I was kind of like not too strict in terms of grading for the first essay because it was your first essay. But now with those same components that I just mentioned, if I see that you continuously disregard like either the announcements I'm sending or the examples that are given, so I can tell if you're reading or not, or if you're following my videos. Some of you have followed my videos and you did a phenomenal job, and I even commented on Safe Assign that you did a great job, so I do applaud you for doing that. But if you are not watching the videos or reading all of the materials that are out there on the online course, and again, this is an online course, so I'm being nice by having these videos for you where I'm doing my own little mini lessons, but if you're not taking advantage of it, I cannot help you. So it's really important that as an online student, there's more work involved where you have to read a lot, where you at least watch the videos that I show you, because it's a lot to take in. Okay, but I want to make sure that you're successfully completing this class, so I give you these videos just pretty much as a little supplement. Okay, so I opened up the additional links, and you will see now that there is a week 9, week 8, and week 7, and so on. So for your second essay, you will not only focus on the components that I talked about, such as essay, structure and whatnot, but you're also focusing on grammar. Grammar will be graded heavily upon. Okay, at the last essay, I did not really grade you too much on that, or really focused on that, I should say. But in terms of the next few weeks, you will be learning more about grammar, subject-verb agreement, subordinate and coordinating conjunctions, clauses, making use of the commas in a proper way, not having comma splices, and so on. Okay, so just please make sure that you're being attentive excuse me, with the following lessons that you will be watching in the next, or reading about in the next few weeks. Okay, so here's a student sample that I want to show you. Here it is. And this is, again, a student sample from another class on a different topic, but it's great because, again, it shows what I'm looking for overall. Okay, and also shows you how other professors grade differently in terms of the structure and so forth. Okay, so every student should have a header. Okay, and excuse me. And as you can see, I just have student sample 1, but technically you would have your last name and page number 1. So number 1 indicating your page number. How do you go about doing that? Well, let me show you once again. You would go to Insert. You would select Header. Oops, it's not behaving. Hold on. Okay, so you'd go to Header, right? And if you scroll down, you will see just a plain number 1, and you can use that as a matter of fact. Okay, so this right here, you can select that, type in your last name and number 1, and that will help to set up your paper accordingly in terms of your header. I'm not going to do it now because I'm not going to ruin the student sample paper. You just have to do it yourself. Okay. Secondly, you have your heading, and here's an example of, again, a different class. So the professor's name is right here. Of course, for my class, you would have Professor Bentham. You would have our class, which is ENC 0027, and then you would have the date. Now, there's 2 different ways of going about doing the date, Some professors are writing the date, not doing, but writing the date. So you can have either the date itself and the month and then the year, or you can have it like this. Preferably what I would want you to have is the actual date. So in this case it would be 0, 1 second, let me just make sure, turn that on for you so you can see. Okay, so you would have 09, right, September, and then 2014. And there was a good handful of you, for those of you that submitted or resubmitted your paper to me through SafeAssign, because there were technical glitches with Blackboard, something that I had no control over this past week, and I do apologize for it, but many of you did see my email and you did resubmit it, and you have until today. But I need to make sure that your paper goes through SafeAssign just to ensure that you're not plagiarizing. But anyway, this is what I want to see in terms of your heading. So there was a good handful, I think about 5, a good handful of individuals that did not have the proper heading. Okay, so if you had the proper heading, you don't have to worry about it, but make sure for the next paper you have that, because I will deduct a lot of points in terms of heading. In addition to the heading, you have your title. Okay, so your title right here, in other words, the first letter of every word should be capitalized. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right. And as you can see here, the title is a pressured decision. Okay, so obviously their paper was different in terms of what they had to write. This individual, his or her paper had to be based on peer pressure. Okay, now the first paragraph, like I told you, is based on your introduction. Okay, and there are different ways to go about starting off your introduction. I gave you a video, or showed you a video, indicating how you could entice the reader in terms of your introduction. So I gave you the acronym FAQ, meaning facts, an anecdote or description, question. In this case, she gave a description. This person, he or she gave a description, and they described, their understanding in terms of pressure, okay, and pressure in different ways. So they're describing what pressure is all about, okay. Then this person segues into their thesis statement, okay. So their last sentence, once again, it would be their thesis statement. So in this particular case, they're going to be talking about, on a one-day visit to the zoo when I was 9 years old, I overcame my fear because of pressure from my peers on a bus, pressure at the zoo, and pressure within myself. However, the end result of enthusiastic cheers left me with no regrets. Okay, so this is their thesis statement. So as a professor, I would look for that in terms of connecting the dots. Are they talking about the one day at the zoo? Are they talking about them encountering pressure on the school bus, and pressure in terms of their peers, and pressure in terms of within themselves, okay, and how they were enthused about the end result, okay? So because of their thesis statement, everyone's thesis statement, common sense, is going to be different. So the layout might be a little bit different, and there was a couple of people that have like something similar to what this young person had, this one student had. But in this case, because they're talking about a day at the zoo, the body paragraphs would be would have a beginning, middle, and ending of events. Okay, so chronological order, more or less. That would be the organization within the body paragraphs. So as you see here, it says here, on a sunny Friday morning, right? And then this person continues and describes how their morning was. They're even using keywords such as 8:30 a.m. Okay, and then they're talking about inside the bus. Again, we're focusing on the thesis. So you're showing that you are, or the person's showing that they are really reflecting on their thesis. Some of you that wrote your essays, it was kind of just off and disjointed. So you want to make sure that everything connects. And what I loved about this person's paper And some of you also had the same kind of flow in regards to being descriptive. You don't want to limit yourself to just 5, to 8 sentences. Really stretch out or try to present a picture for the reader, okay? For whoever's reading your paper. So this person was talking about wails and laughter and joyful screams. So now you want to start expanding your paper, especially for essay 2, having to be descriptive, okay? Really giving details to make sure that the person knows where you're coming from in regards to your topic. Okay, so again, connecting the dots to your thesis, this individual talks about the pressure in terms of how it's rising. So they start off by saying, in addition, the intoxicating aroma of chicken, buns, and biscuits added force to the rising pressure in the bus. Okay, and then she continues, or he continues on to talking about the smell and the journey to the zoo and how the classmates were, all raucous and they were really having a good time. Okay, and the reader also continued by saying, my classmates started babbling about the encounter they plan on having with my greatest fear, the snake. So this is where the writers really, or the authors really trying to bring you in, okay, and how it connects to their thesis. So this person said, I was dumbfounded because I had a phobia for snakes. I did not want anyone to find out, so I sat in complete silence. Okay, so this is where, again, you're showing that, I am talking about pressure and I'm on the verge of feeling that pressure where everyone's excited except for me, and I can just feel it intensifying. Okay, so this is the beginning aspect of their paper. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Then it talks about in the second body paragraph, again, you're having that organization by stating, on arrival at the zoo. Okay, so now they're talking about, or now he or she is talking about going to the zoo, okay, or being at the zoo, and their experience there, and how they're describing the whole scenery. I'm not going to read everything verbatimly for you, but I'm just going to show you more or less, okay, how they're continuing in terms of their experience, okay, at the zoo. And again, beginning, middle, and ending. And now is where you're really honing in terms of, or where that author is really honing in terms of their thesis statement. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of things in terms of how the author is showing that he or she is on the verge of having this pressure arise. So I started to, let me use a different color so that way you can see very clearly what I'm highlighting, but I started to feel worried because I have a great fear for snakes. And then she's talking about everyone's enthusiasm, right? Okay, so again, that's showing a connection that she's on the verge of talking about peer pressure. Okay, and then she also stated that while they were interacting with the snake groomer, okay, I was busy pretending and doing something as if she was fascinated with some kind of gate. Okay, then she continues on, or he continues on by saying the description of the snake, and then they continue on, he or she continues on by talking about the snake and how her peers or his peers were really engaged with the snake and so forth. And the individual, the author, says, I felt burdened. Okay, as a matter of fact, let me back up a little bit. I feared getting any closer, so I kept my eyes glued. Okay, so again, it's showing a sense of fear, that pressure arising, but then you come over here and it says, I felt burdened. This burning feeling as the eyes of my peers, right, okay, seemed to see straight into my soul. Their facial expressions had questions as they wondered why I was the only one standing 8 feet away, okay, and my cheeks burned with embarrassment, right? So again, that's showing that connection. Then you continue, or that person continued on by saying, what should I do? Peer pressure, there you go. And they're continuing by saying, I asked myself, I wondered if I should pet it too. because I did not want to be laughed at. So peer pressure. And they continue on by talking about that peer pressure. They talked about how, and gave descriptiveness, in terms of samples of sweat broke out in my palms. So you're really painting a picture. As college students, you're really steering away from just simplistic writing, and now you're just really trying to create a picture. A couple of you from the papers that I've read so far, you did very well on that in terms of, and I even commented in regards to that. So continue on with that same format. But if you're just saying, I did this, I did that, that is simplistic level writing, and you need to be more complex, especially with the second essay. So I'm showing you an example of what I'm looking for. I hated being laughed at, so I propped myself up on mental motivation, telling myself I can, did little to calm my fragile nerves. So again, talking about peer pressure. I'm going to continue on some more. All right. Then the person talks more in terms of the surprising end, the ending factor, where they realized it wasn't as bad as they thought after holding on to the the snake, okay, and that individual embraced it even more. They also mentioned, or he or she also mentioned, how their classmates, okay, were surprised in terms of her bravery or his bravery. So they all started to cheer her on, or him on. I stood beaming at everyone with the snake on display. Okay, so that was also connecting to the thesis statement in terms of, at first you had that pressure within yourself, and then now you're feeling elated because, or excited because, you actually held that snake. Okay, so this is where you see that connection throughout. Then you have here, as I reflected on the day's passing events, I smiled. So in your conclusion, normally you have some kind of form of reflection, like I noted in one of the first videos that I sent to you. So this person restated in terms of their thesis statement, as I reflected on the day's passing events, I smiled at the fact that pressure from my peers on the bus, at the zoo, and from within myself motivated me to overcome my fear. Okay, and so that right there is an indicator that he or she is rephrasing their thesis statement and showing some form of reflection, as I noted here. Okay, you're showing some form of reflection in your conclusion. So this is what I should be seeing, especially in your second essay. I want to see progression. I will upload this for you, and you have a great day. Bye.